So Koyan Dark is back on Raid Up over here on the NA side of things, and I wanted to give her one of these servant evaluation videos. If you don't know, instead of being more of a traditional servant review that I do, these are more, again, evaluations of the servant, a character that I've used for the past couple of years, and giving you guys my thoughts as someone who has used them for a while. And Koyan Dark is one of those servants that I want to do this for because I think a lot of people have the wrong idea about her. This is obviously not helped out by the fact that we have Kukulkan coming out in about 2 weeks over here on the NA side of things, and from a damage or farming perspective, yeah, she gets completely blown out of the water by Kukulkan. I mean, who would have thought? The newer servant is going to be a lot better than the older one, but I do think there are some corner cases where Koyan Dark actually does edge out against Kukulkan. For one, you're going to be seeing in the background me using her more as a support. When she initially dropped on the JP side of things, I was one of the people that was thinking, oh, she's going to pair very nicely with Koyan Light, and sure, they do actually make kind of a decent pairing, but then whenever we got Ace the Savior, I started getting the gears turning in my head about using her instead of Koyan Light, because I, for one, don't have Koyan Light on the JP side of things. I don't have my own Oberon. I'm pretty much only relegated to doing arts farming because I only have Castoria and Proto Merlin over there. I recently picked up Caster Scotty, but Caster Scotty on her own is a little bit dicey if you're going to be able to do quick farming with that, especially with how the nodes are getting stronger and stronger, and you would really like to have the Ruler Scotty for the extra NP gain or Oberon for the extra damage. So whenever Ace came out, I was re-evaluating Koyan Dark's kit and realized she was really strong for her. And that is because you may be thinking, well, Kukulkan, doesn't she give a 50% battery to somebody? Wouldn't she be better for these scenarios? And not necessarily. See, the thing with Kukulkan is that you can have her be somewhat of a pseudo support, but you're not really getting the max value out of her if you're doing that. Realistically, you should be using her as your primary DPS. You should be selfish with a lot of her buffs, and while she can donate an attack buff as well, she can't give all of her buffs to the other party members, and that's where I think Koyan Dark shines. The main key things that she does that I think makes her or gives her some corner cases in a niche over Kukulkan is the fact that she gives 30% to the entire party, gives the Buster buff to everyone in the party, and can target an overcharge level of 2 to any party member. If you're a newer player and you don't really know what that means, it basically means that overcharge effect that you have on your NP is going to be ranked up twice. So say you have a 10% Buster buff on your overcharge effect, and that goes up to 15, 20, 25, and 30, you would start at that 25%, and that could still be raised by depending on how you order your NP chains and whatnot, and I think that makes her exceptionally powerful, and her having a really good pairing with Ace the Savior is not a bad thing, as I'm sure a lot of people seem to be realizing how good Ace is. I'm not going to be petty and say that I told everybody so, but that's not a bad character to have good synergy with, and that's also just not getting into the fact that she will have good synergy with other Buster servants as well. So in the first gameplay, you're seeing me use her with Ace to have Ace be able to do a 3-turn Buster farm without the need for Koyan Light, just bringing a friend Oberon and having the waiver that I got from completing Fuyuki. There is also the added bonus that if I'm using Ace for a 3-turn setup, because they pair so nicely together, Koyan Dark can also function as an additional NP if I'm lacking in damage. Usually not a big issue, you know, with the friend Oberon and my Ace being an NP2 servant, but if I am going into, say, a 90++ node and I just need, you know, an extra like 100 to 200,000 damage, Koyan Dark will be able to output that because, again, everybody's kind of giving the buffs to everyone, so it's not like she's really missing out on anything. The only thing she's really missing out on is the targeted third skill for Oberon, but again, that's for Ace to do the majority of the damage, and Koyan Dark is there to kind of pick up the slack. But then in the second gameplay, instead of using Ace the Savior, I pivot over to showing how much damage Koyan Dark can do, and sure, it's not as much damage, granted she is NP1 and she does have a farming CE on her, but I still think the damage that she's able to do is respectable. The only place that I think she kind of fell out a little bit is when I brought her to the 1 million HP Galatea boss, if you can really even call it a boss, that you get from the Bleached Earth missions. If you're on the NA side of things, we'll be getting this, you know, as we start moving into Ordeal Call 1, there'll start being these better farming nodes that give you more bond and that are just generally quicker to farm because you go fight one large enemy. And I find these to be really good damage sponges to really test how much damage these units can do, and she can just barely not get the kill on this one. And for those wondering, yeah, she did have Black Grail, she did have the power mod, she got really close but wasn't able to really close that out. But again, I don't think that that's really a big problem for her, because in my eyes, with Kukulkan coming out, you would always default to use her instead. You know, instead of bringing Koyan Dark as your main DPS, just use Kuku. She does way more damage and you don't have this issue. But if you need some utility in your parties, that's where I really think she's going to start to shine. And I'm not telling you that you should be going and rolling for Koyan instead of rolling for Kukulkan. I think for the majority of players, going for Kukulkan is just going to be more beneficial for you. But I will say, as somebody who has Kukulkan, has Koyan, but doesn't have Koyan Light or my own Oberon on JP, I do use Koyan more. Strictly because of the fact that she just has more utility. It's very odd because we're so conditioned in this game to see a servant that gives you a 50% battery and think, wow, that's really crazy. I would always use this servant over the other ones, but it's just the perfect storm of abilities that Koyan has, with being able to give the entire party NP, even if it's less. Technically that translates to more. I mean, if you think about 30% for each party member, that's 90% that you're total giving to everybody, right? That's really, really powerful. That's an insane ability, especially in this world of multi-core farming where you might need to use multiple NPs. And you'll also see in some of these setups that Oberon is also ready to go to fire his NP. And so if I just need that extra little bit of damage, I could even do a 3-way NP chain, and that is only allowed because of Koyan because she gives the entire party the NP and also happens to give them positive buffs in the Buster buff that she gives everybody. And while I'm predominantly using this with Ace because, I'm, the biggest Morgan enjoyer on the platform, of course I'm going to be using it to enable my Ace the Savior, I have no doubt that you could use this with other servants. Ace kind of benefits from it because she's able to not only have her own 50% battery, but then her third skill gives everybody else 50%. But even just thinking off the top of the head as I'm recording this, if you have your own Archetype Earth, but you don't have your own Oberon or anything, you could easily do those team comps, with Archetype Earth being able to take out wave 1 by herself because it's a guaranteed 100% battery. You could then have your Koyan secure, waves 2 and 3. Also, depending on what type of starting charge CEs you're using, but for most people using Buster CEs, I'm assuming you're defaulting to either Aerial Drive or Cranking, as those are both 50% starting charge CEs that give you a Buster buff and an additional positive effect. And so I just merely wanted to make this video to kind of shout out to Koyan and say that she's not as bad as I think everybody else is thinking. We actually did talk about not Koyan specifically in yesterday's stream, but we were also talking about the value of servants because, somebody was bringing up how they still really like to use Space Ishtar, and I was saying that people in the community do tend to put down servants when new ones come out, and FGO is unlike a lot of other gacha games where there's not really the same power creep, right? Where if I'm playing, say, the Dragon Ball game, right, there are just certain units that you can't bring to new content anymore because they're just too weak. They get power crept out of the game, but FGO is a little bit different. If I still wanted to use Lancelot as my main quick AoE farmer, I could still definitely do that. There are better options in the game for me to use, but if I still wanted to use my favorite servant, that is never going to change. There are always ways to make them work, and I always describe it in the way of money. When we had all the arts farmers coming out, I just described them in, monetary terms, saying that, well, if Space Ishtar was worth $100 and then Summer Kama is worth 150 and then Summer Ibuki is worth $250, that doesn't mean that the other two are not still worth whatever set value you have them at. It's just something that is more valuable has come out, but these two are still valuable. They didn't get any worse. And I think that's very true of Koyan because when Koyan came out, I thought she was a phenomenal servant. I thought she was really strong, and my opinion of her has only raised over time. Again, I really want to stress that I'm not telling anybody to use this video as an excuse to go summon for Koyan but I am saying that if you do have the spare Sang Quartz and you are a big fan of Koyan and you're like, what, I will plan on summoning for Kukulkan, but I also would want to throw a couple of multis at Koyan but I'm on the fence about it, I will tell you that you will get some value out of her. She feels like one of those servants that the worse your box is, the better she gets, if you understand what I'm saying, where once you get Kukulkan and you have Koyan Light and you have Oberon, it's probably better to go for Cuckoo, right? Because you're just going to use Cuckoo to just crush everything in the game. But if you're lacking in some of those supports, these type of servants, like not just Koyan but also say like Lohai or King Tut that we just recently got on the JP side of things, they increase in value. Same thing for Tets, who is also coming out in like a couple days over here on the NA side of things, where if you're lacking in supports, these servants that can not only be a decent support for the party, but also double as a DPS, have an immense amount of value. And I just don't want her to be relegated to effectively the worst version of Kukulkan because she has more to offer than that. Sure, she might not be able to do as much damage, but damage really isn't everything in FGO, because you might have Kukulkan like me at NP2 on the JP side of things, but she's just really not usable. I don't have the tools to really make it worth going for her, so I just use my other servants instead. Or to really flip that to different card types, if you have somebody like Summer Ibuki, but you don't have Nero Bright, you don't have Castoria, and the only guys you've got are say like Jufu and Paracelsus, you didn't even pick up the free waiver for some reason, you know, that servant is not really going to be showing their true worth, and you might not use them for things. You might default to using somebody like Nitocris just because she has 100% battery and can clear the waves. And that's really what these servant evaluation things are about, just kind of getting people to think about these servants, you know, giving my own experience using them, giving my like true thoughts about how I feel about them in more of a calm, relaxed environment, not trying to convince anybody that, oh, this servant is broken or this servant is worse than people think. Just getting a little bit of introspection on how you think about the servants and what they're actually capable of doing and what's best for your account. And if you have more questions, you know, maybe this video has gotten you to think a little bit about your box and maybe this servant is going to be really strong for you. We do have the Discord down in the description down below. You can go ahead and join that. We have an FGO channel that I pop into every now and then, but is also fairly active with people, so you can always talk to other people that are also really into the meta of the game and help you make that decision if it's worth going for this servant. Or maybe again, you already have Koyan Light and Oberon and they'll probably tell you that just go for Kukulkan, which is probably what I would tell you as well. If you've already got the major supports, Koyan Dark isn't as good, you know, she kind of falls off just a little bit. I also stream every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, so you can also ask me about it then. Just make sure to ask about that question before she actually goes away. Usually around 6 to 7 p.m. Central Time is when we start. I go live on Twitch and YouTube at the same time. We do the dual streaming, so you could either go to Twitch if you prefer that, or just stick around here and click that bell so you're notified when that goes live. And then obviously, if you enjoyed this video, leave a like on the video and subscribe for future daily FGO content. And if there's another servant that you think is coming up on getting a rate up that you would like to see an evaluation for, if you like this style of video, let me know that in the comment section down below. Or if you really want it to get done immediately, there is the Patreon that is linked down in the description down below, where you gain access to the exclusive Patreon chat over on the Discord. And again, they don't really be using it, they don't be telling me to make anything, but it's there that if you want a specific video made, you can always just hop on in there and be like, ZTL, I want that servant evaluation done on my boy Eric Bloodaxe. And you know what? If that's what they want, if that's what you want and you think it's worth it, then by all means, you go ahead and do that. But again, don't feel pressure to do that. It's just for people that want to go that extra mile or specifically want to see some servant or topic covered. So with all that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. Have yourselves a safe rest of your day and have the best rolls that you can if you do decide to go for Koyan Dark. But with that being said, I'm out of here. Peace, light, guys.